It arrives on a Tuesday, not in daylight when the world is watching, not during a press conference or a UN summit or a moment anyone has prepared for. It arrives at 2:47 in the morning, Mountain Standard Time, on an ordinary night in October at a radio telescope in the high desert of New Mexico, while most of the Western Hemisphere is asleep. No one hears it at first, not with their ears. The signal is not a sound. It is a pattern of electromagnetic radiation at a frequency of 1420 megahertz, the hydrogen line, the frequency that water molecules emit when they change energy states, the frequency that every introductory astronomy textbook identifies as the most logical channel for interstellar communication. It arrives as a sequence of pulses, regular, repeating, structured in a way that is unmistakably artificial. A computer notices it first, a software pipeline designed to filter millions of candidate signals per night flags it, assigns it a preliminary score and routes it to a secondary analysis queue. For 11 minutes, no human being is aware that anything has happened. The signal sits in a queue behind 300 other candidates waiting its turn. And then a graduate student sitting alone in a control room with a cold cup of coffee and a half-finished crossword puzzle sees the score and stops breathing. Welcome to Strindberg's Space Stories. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, subscribing truly helps others find their way here too. Tonight, we're going to imagine something that has never happened, something that scientists have spent decades preparing for, and that no preparation could make ordinary. We're going to walk, minute by minute, through the first hour after humanity confirms that a signal from another world is real, that we are not alone. This is not an action movie. There will be no explosions, no panic, no alien ships descending through clouds. What there will be is silence, uncertainty, the strange suspended feeling of standing at the edge of something so vast that the mind cannot hold it all at once, and the slow, quiet realization that the world has changed, even though it looks exactly the same. So settle in, let your breathing slow. This happened on a Tuesday, at 2:47 in the morning, while you were asleep. The telescope is the Very Large Array. 27 radio dishes arranged in a Y-shaped pattern across the plains of San Agustin, 50 miles west of Socorro, New Mexico. Each dish is 82 feet across. Together they function as a single instrument with the resolving power of an antenna 22 miles wide. The VLA has been operating since 1980. It has observed pulsars, quasars, black holes, and the faint afterglow of the Big Bang. Tonight, it is conducting a routine survey of nearby sun-like stars as part of the Breakthrough Listen program, the most comprehensive search for extraterrestrial intelligence ever undertaken, funded by a $100 million grant from the Russian-Israeli billionaire Yuri Milner. The control room is quiet. It is always quiet at this hour. 2 monitors on the left wall display the array configuration. A third shows the current pointing coordinates. The room smells like burnt coffee and carpet cleaner. The overhead lights are dimmed. There is a hum from the air conditioning, a sound so constant that no one who works here notices it anymore. The graduate student's name does not matter for this story, but let us call her Maya. She's 26. She's in the 3rd year of her doctoral program at the University of California, Berkeley. She's at the VLA tonight because it is her turn on the observation rotor, and because her advisor believes that the experience of sitting alone with the data is an essential part of an astronomer's education. She does not disagree. But at 2:47 in the morning, with her coffee going cold and the crossword only half done, the romance of the profession feels distant. The alert appears on her screen as a yellow banner. This is not unusual. The software flags hundreds of candidates every night. Most of them are terrestrial interference, radio signals from satellites, cell towers, aircraft, microwave ovens in the staff kitchen. The filtering pipeline catches nearly all of them, but a few always slip through, and part of Maya's job is to review the ones that score above a certain threshold and mark them as interference or candidate. This one scores higher than anything she has ever seen. She leans forward. This signal is narrow band, confined to a single, precise frequency. It is at 1420.405 MHz, the hydrogen line. It is coming from a direction consistent with a star called HD 164922. A sun-like star roughly 72 light-years away in the constellation Hercules, and it is pulsing, not randomly, in a pattern, a repeating sequence of prime numbers. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, then a gap, then the sequence repeats 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, gap, repeat. Maya stares at the screen. Her hands are not moving. The crossword puzzle is forgotten. The coffee is forgotten. The hum of the air conditioning fills the room. She's aware, in a way that she will later describe as almost physical, that something is different, that the data on her screen is not like any data she has seen before, that the pattern is not something a satellite produces, not something a microwave oven produces, not something any natural astrophysical process produces. Prime numbers, the universal calling card, the one thing that no natural process generates in sequence, but that any intelligent species anywhere in the universe would recognize as artificial. You do not need to share a language. You do not need to share a biology. You do not need to share a planet or a chemistry or a history. Prime numbers are prime numbers everywhere. They are the same on Earth as they are on a planet orbiting a star 72 light-years away. If you want to announce your presence to the universe, you send primes. Maya reaches for her phone, then she stops. She puts it down. She looks at the screen again. She checks the array configuration. She checks the pointing coordinates. She checks the frequency calibration. She pulls up the raw data and examines the waterfall plot, the visual representation of signal strength over time and frequency. The signal is there, clean, sharp, narrow, repeating. Exactly where it should not be unless something, somewhere, is sending it on purpose. She picks up the phone again. Her hands are shaking slightly. She calls her advisor. The phone rings 4 times. A groggy voice answers. Maya speaks quickly, then forces herself to slow down. She describes the signal, the frequency, the pattern, the score, the direction. There is a pause on the other end of the line. Then her advisor says 3 words that she will remember for the rest of her life. Don't touch anything. 15 minutes later, the control room is no longer quiet. Her advisor has arrived, dressed in the clothes he grabbed from the floor beside his bed, his hair uncombed, his eyes sharp. He sits down at the console next to Maya and begins the verification protocol. This is a procedure that the SETI community has rehearsed many times, a step-by-step checklist designed to eliminate every possible source of false positive before any announcement is made. The first step is to rule out terrestrial interference. They slew the array away from the source, pointing the dishes at a blank patch of sky 30 degrees to the east. The signal disappears. They slew back to the original coordinates. The signal returns. They repeat this 5 times. Each time the signal appears when they point at HD 164922 and vanishes when they point away. It is not local interference. It is not coming from the ground. It is coming from the sky, from a specific point in the sky, consistent with a star 72 light-years away. The second step is to check for satellites. They consult the database of known satellite orbits and confirm that no active satellite is currently in the beam path. They check for GPS satellites, Starlink satellites, military satellites, defunct satellites, rocket bodies, and debris. Nothing matches. The signal is not coming from anything in Earth orbit. The third step is to check for instrumental artifacts. They run a diagnostic on the receiver electronics, the amplifiers, the digitizers, the correlator. Everything is nominal. They switch to a different receiver on the same dish. The signal persists. They switch to a completely different dish in the array. The signal persists. It is not an artifact of the hardware. Maya's advisor picks up his phone. He calls the director of Breakthrough Listen at Berkeley. It is 3:20 in the morning in New Mexico, which makes it 2:20 in California. The phone rings 6 times. Then a voice answers, instantly alert. Some people sleep lightly. Some people have been waiting for a call like this their entire career. Within 20 minutes, a secure video conference is established. On the screen are 4 faces: Maya, her advisor, the Breakthrough Listen director, and a radio astronomer at the park's observatory in Australia, where it is late afternoon and the sun is still shining. The Australian is asked to point the park's telescope, a single dish 210 feet across, at HD 164922, and report what she sees. It takes 8 minutes to slew the park's dish and acquire the target. 8 minutes during which no one on the video call speaks. Maya can hear someone breathing. She can hear the hum of the air conditioning. She can hear her own heartbeat, which she notices has not slowed down since 2:47. The Australian astronomer looks at her screen. Then she looks at the camera. Then she says, very quietly, "I have it." The signal is real. It is coming from the direction of a star 72 light-years away. It has been independently confirmed by 2 telescopes on opposite sides of the Earth. It is not interference. It is not an artifact. It is not a satellite. It is a narrow band signal at the hydrogen line, pulsing in a sequence of prime numbers, repeating every 93 seconds. For a long moment, no one speaks. 4 faces on a screen, separated by thousands of miles and half a day's worth of time zones, looking at each other in silence. The Australian astronomer's window shows blue sky. Maya's window shows nothing. It is still dark in New Mexico. The stars are still out. The dishes of the VLA are still pointing at a patch of sky in Hercules, collecting photons that have been travelling for 72 years, carrying a message that is just now arriving. There is a document. It has existed in various forms since 1989. It is called the Declaration of Principles Concerning Activities Following the Detection of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. It was drafted by the International Academy of Astronautics and adopted by the International Astronomical Union, and it lays out in careful, diplomatic, bureaucratic language what should happen if a signal is confirmed. The principles are non-binding. No government has signed them into law. They are guidelines, not orders, but they represent the closest thing humanity has to a plan for this moment. The first principle is simple: verify. Confirm the signal through independent observation. This has already been done. Parkes has confirmed the VLA detection. 2 telescopes, 2 continents, the same signal. The second principle is, do not reply. Do not transmit any response until international consultation has taken place. This principle exists because a reply would reveal not only our existence, but our technological capability, and depending on the content, potentially our location, our biology, and our vulnerabilities. A reply once sent cannot be recalled. It travels at the speed of light, and it carries consequences that no individual, no institution, and no nation has the authority to impose on the rest of the species. The decision to respond, if it is ever made, must belong to everyone. The third principle is inform. Notify the relevant national authorities, the Secretary General of the United Nations, the International Astronomical Union, and the public. The signal is not to be kept secret. It belongs to humanity, not to the team that discovered it, not to the institution that operates the telescope, not to the government in whose territory the telescope sits. The information is to be shared openly, promptly, and without restriction. These principles were written in a conference room by committee over decades. They are reasonable, they are measured, they are wise. And at 3:35 in the morning, in a control room in the New Mexico desert, with a signal from another civilization pulsing on the screen, they feel entirely inadequate, like a fire evacuation plan pinned to the wall of a building that has never imagined the kind of fire that is now burning. Maya's advisor makes the calls, the director of the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, the chair of the IAU Commission on Astrobiology, the National Science Foundation. Each call follows the same pattern: disbelief, questions, silence, then the sound of someone getting out of bed and reaching for their clothes. By 3:45 in the morning, 11 people know. By 4 o'clock, the number is 31. Each one has been asked firmly and politely not to contact the media, not to post on social media, and not to discuss the signal with anyone outside the verification chain until the analysis is complete. Each one agrees, each one understands the gravity of what they have been told, and each one, in the privacy of their own mind, is trying to process a thought that does not fit inside any of the mental structures they have built over a lifetime of thinking about the universe. We are not alone. It is a thought that sounds simple, 3 words, but it is not simple. It is the most complex thought a human being can have, because it rearranges everything, every assumption about our place in the cosmos, every religion, every philosophy, every mythology, every story we've ever told about who we are and why we're here. It does not destroy these things, but it changes the light in which they are seen. Like waking up in a room you have lived in your entire life and realizing for the first time that there is a window you never noticed, and through that window someone is looking back. Outside the control room, the desert is dark. The stars are out in a way that they never are in cities, thick and bright and uncountable, the Milky Way arching overhead like a river of spilled light. Coyotes call in the distance, their voices thin and sharp in the cold air, then falling silent. The temperature has dropped to near freezing. The concrete path between the control building and the nearest dish is lit by a single yellow lamp that attracts no insects at this time of year. The 27 dishes of the VLA stand in their Y pattern across the plain, white and enormous in the starlight, each one 82 feet across, each one pointing at the same spot in the sky, motionless except for the imperceptible tracking that compensates for the rotation of the Earth. They look from a distance like enormous flowers turned towards a sun that is not there. They are listening. And what they are hearing is something that no telescope on Earth has ever heard before. In Albuquerque, 60 miles to the north, a man is walking his dog along a quiet street. The leash is slack. The dog is sniffing a fire hydrant with the total concentration that dogs bring to such tasks. The man is looking at his phone, scrolling through nothing in particular, waiting. A car passes, its headlights sweeping across the pavement and disappearing around the corner. The street is otherwise empty. He does not know. He will not know for hours. He's living in the last hours of a world that believes it is alone. and the ordinariness of what he is doing, walking a dog, checking a phone, waiting on a sidewalk at 4 a.m, will later seem almost unbearably poignant. In Tokyo, it is late afternoon. The sky is grey with autumn cloud. Salarymen are leaving their offices, flooding into subway stations, compressed into trains that smell of cologne and damp wool. Schoolchildren in uniforms are eating convenience store rice balls on platform benches. A grandmother is arranging persimmons on a table in a second-floor apartment, her television showing a cooking programme that no one is watching. In London, it is mid-morning. Rain is falling on the Thames. A barista in Shoreditch is steaming milk for a flat white and thinking about her rent. A barrister is crossing Fleet Street with an umbrella that the wind keeps inverting. In Sao Paulo, the sun is rising over a city of 12 million people, painting the favelas gold, and not one of those 12 million has any idea that something has changed. In a hospital in Mumbai, a baby is being born. The mother is gripping the railing of the bed. The doctor's hands are steady. The baby arrives at 4:17 a.m, New Mexico time, approximately 90 minutes after the signal was first detected, and it enters a world that is different from the one its mother woke up in that morning, though neither of them will know this for some time. In a classroom in Nairobi, a teacher is writing a quadratic equation on a blackboard, and the chalk dust drifts in a beam of sunlight, and the students are copying the equation into notebooks that have cartoon characters on their covers. In a fishing village on the coast of Norway, a woman is mending a net by the light of a lamp. The North Sea is dark and cold beyond the harbour wall. She has no idea. The world is doing what the world does. 8 billion people going about their lives, eating and sleeping and arguing and laughing and grieving and hoping, and none of them knowing. The signal has been confirmed for less than an hour. The circle of knowledge is still small, perhaps 50 people now, scattered across laboratories and offices and bedrooms on 4 continents, each one carrying a piece of information that weighs more than anything they have ever known, each one looking at their phone, or their screen, or the ceiling of their office, trying to fit this new fact into a life that was not built to hold it. Maya steps outside the control room for a moment. She needs air. She needs to feel something other than the recycled cool of the climate-controlled room, to hear something other than the hum and the voices and the soft clicking of keyboards. The door closes behind her, and the air conditioning cuts off, replaced by silence. Real silence. Desert silence. The kind of silence that has weight and texture, that you can feel on your skin, that makes the blood in your ears sound like a river. She stands on the concrete step and looks up at the sky. The stars are there as they always are, as they have been every night of her life, fixed and steady and indifferent to what has just happened. They do not know. Stars do not know things. But somewhere among them, in a direction she could point to if she raised her arm, there is a star called HD 164922, and around that star, or near it, something is sending a signal, something that chose a frequency, something that composed a pattern, something that decided, for reasons she cannot begin to imagine, to announce its existence to the universe. She thinks about what the signal looked like when it was transmitted, 72 years ago. On Earth, that was 1954. Dwight Eisenhower was President of the United States. The Korean War had just ended. Elvis Presley had not yet recorded his first single. The structure of DNA had been published by Watson and Crick the year before. Television was still a novelty. Computers filled entire rooms and had less processing power than a modern wristwatch. Humanity had not yet launched a satellite into orbit, and somewhere, 72 light-years away, in a place she's never seen, under a sky she cannot imagine, something looked outward and decided to send a message a sequence of prime numbers. The simplest possible proof of intelligence, a knock on the door of the universe. The knock has been travelling ever since, through 72 years of empty space, past dust clouds and asteroid fields and the scattered debris of ancient stellar explosions, past comets that no one has ever seen, past planets that no one has ever named, past the orbits of worlds that may themselves be inhabited, that may have detected the same signal decades ago, or that may have sent signals of their own that are still on their way, moving at the speed of light, which is the fastest anything can move in this universe, and which is also, across the distances between stars, agonizingly slow, a human lifetime to cross 72 light years. And tonight, on this ordinary October Tuesday, at 2:47 in the morning Mountain Standard Time, it arrived. And now the question is not whether the signal is real. It is. The question is not whether it is artificial. It is. The question is what to do about it. And that question, Maya realizes as she stands on the concrete step looking up at the stars, is not a question for scientists. It is a question for the species. Back inside the control room, the video conference has grown. There are now 12 faces on the screen. Astronomers, astrobiologists, a representative from NASA's Office of Planetary Protection, a science policy advisor who was woken by a phone call and is still trying to understand what she has been told. The conversation is careful, measured. Everyone is speaking in the way that scientists speak when they know the stakes are absolute, precise, qualified, hedged with caveats and conditional language. But beneath the caution, there is something else, something that no one is saying out loud. Joy. A wild, disorienting, almost inappropriate joy. Because every person on this call became a scientist for a reason. They didn't enter this field for the salary, which is modest, or for the fame, which is non-existent, or for the working hours, which are terrible. They became scientists because they wanted to know. Because the question, the great question, the question that sits behind every telescope and every equation and every late night in a control room staring at data, is the same question that a child asks when they look up at the stars for the first time. Are we alone? And tonight, for the first time in the history of the species that asked it, the answer appears to be no. What does it mean? The question sounds naive, but it is the most important question there is, and it is the one that no one on this call can answer. The signal tells them that someone is there. It does not tell them who. It does not tell them what they look like, what they value, what they fear, whether they are kind or dangerous, whether they are still alive or long extinct, their signal a ghost transmission from a civilization that died centuries ago, its message still travelling outward through space like light from a star that has already gone dark. The signal says, we exist. Or perhaps, we existed. The tense is uncertain. Everything is uncertain, except the signal itself, which is steady and clear and continuing to pulse on the screens of 4 telescopes on 4 continents, as patient and as persistent as the thing that sent it. No one cheers, no one cries, though some will later. No one makes a speech. They continue working because that is what scientists do. They check the data again. They run the analysis again. They look for the flaw, the error, the alternative explanation that would make the signal ordinary. They want to be wrong. Not really, not in their hearts, but they know that wanting to be right is the most dangerous bias in science. The bias that leads to cold fusion announcements and faster-than-light neutrino claims and the embarrassment that follows, and so they try, systematically and methodically, to prove themselves wrong. And they fail. The signal holds, the pattern holds, the primes keep pulsing, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, every 93 seconds, from a star in Hercules, 72 light-years away, the most persistent, most patient, most unambiguous signal that any radio telescope has ever detected. Someone on the call asks the question that everyone has been thinking but no one has said. Should we tell the president? There is a long silence. Then the NASA representative says quietly, "We should tell a lot of people." And then, after another pause, "But not yet. Not until we have run every test we can run. Not until we are sure. Because once we say it, we cannot unsay it, and the world will never be the same." She is right, and everyone on the call knows she is right. This is not a discovery that can be tentative. It cannot be announced with caveats and asterisks and calls for further study. A false alarm would be catastrophic. If the scientific community announces that it has detected a signal from another civilization and then retracts the claim a week later, the damage to public trust in science will be immense and lasting. Every conspiracy theory, every fringe belief, every accusation of cover-up and deception will be amplified beyond any possibility of correction. The announcement, when it comes, must be ironclad, bulletproof, beyond any reasonable doubt. It must be the most carefully verified scientific claim in the history of the species, because it will also be the most consequential. And so they keep working, quietly, methodically, with the discipline that science requires even when every instinct is screaming to run out into the street and shout. At 4:30 in the morning, a radio telescope in the Netherlands is brought online and pointed at HD 164922, the Westerbork Synthesis Radio Telescope, an array of 14 dishes in the flat, dark countryside of Drenthe. It confirms the signal: 3 telescopes, 3 continents, the same pattern. At 4:45, the Meerkat Array in the Karoo Desert of South Africa joins the observation. 64 dishes, 4 telescopes, 4 continents. The signal is there, everywhere, consistent and unwavering, arriving from the same point in the sky at every observatory that cares to look. The circle of knowledge has grown to over 100 people. Encrypted emails have been sent, marked urgent, to the directors of radio observatories on every continent. The International Astronomical Union has been formally notified through its emergency communication channel. A draft statement is being prepared by a small group of senior scientists, though no one agrees on the wording, and the disagreement is not about the science. The science is clear. The disagreement is about language, about tone, about how you tell 8 billion people in a single statement that the universe is inhabited. How do you choose the words? What language do you lead with? Do you explain the science before you state the conclusion, or do you state the conclusion first and let the explanation follow? Do you say detected or confirmed? Do you say extraterrestrial intelligence or alien life? Do you use the word alien at all, knowing what it conjures in the popular imagination? Do you mention the location of the star? Do you say how far away it is? Someone suggests leading with the simplest possible statement: 3 sentences. The international scientific community has confirmed the detection of an artificial signal of extraterrestrial origin. The signal originates from the vicinity of the star HD 164922, approximately 72 light-years from Earth. Further analysis is ongoing. Someone else says that is too cold, too clinical, that the moment requires something more, something that acknowledges what the discovery means, not just what it is. The argument continues, quiet and earnest, while the signal pulses on the screens around the world, indifferent to the question of how it will be described. It is nearly 4 o'clock in the morning in New Mexico. The first faint hint of dawn is still more than an hour away. The desert is dark, the stars are bright. The dishes of the VLA continue to track their target, moving imperceptibly as the Earth rotates, keeping their gaze fixed on a point in the sky that no one will ever look at the same way again. In the control room, Maya is still at her console. She's not slept. She's not eaten. She has barely moved from her chair in over an hour. The coffee is still on the desk, stone cold now, untouched. The crossword puzzle is still half finished. The world she was living in when she started that crossword no longer exists. It has been replaced by another world, identical in every visible respect, but fundamentally, irreversibly, permanently different. She looks at the clock. It has been 1 hour since the alert appeared on her screen. 1 hour since a yellow banner interrupted a routine night of observation and split history in two. 60 minutes, 3,600 seconds. In that time, she has confirmed the detection, verified it with 4 independent telescopes, notified the international scientific community, and set in motion a process that will, within days, become the most significant news event in the history of human civilization. And outside, the world is still asleep. In a few hours, the sun will rise over New Mexico. It will rise over Tokyo and London and Sao Paulo and Mumbai and Nairobi and the fishing village in Norway. People will wake up. They will make coffee. They will check their phones. And at some point during the day, though no one yet knows exactly when or how, they will learn. They will learn that a signal has been detected, that it is artificial, that it comes from a star 72 light-years away, that it pulses in prime numbers, that it has been confirmed by telescopes on 4 continents, and that the question humanity has been asking since the first person looked up at the night sky and wondered, the question that Fermi asked over lunch in 1950, the question that has driven 65 years of searching and listening and hoping and wondering finally has an answer. We are not alone. The implications will take years to unfold, decades, perhaps centuries. The theological debates, the philosophical reckonings, the political manoeuvring, the fear and the wonder and the confusion and the awe, all of it is still to come. Tonight, none of it has started. Tonight, it is just a signal on a screen. A pattern of pulses from a star in Hercules. Primes, repeating every 93 seconds, arriving with the patience of light at the speed of light from a distance so vast that the signal was sent before most of the people who will receive it were born. Maya looks at the screen one more time. The waterfall plot scrolls slowly downward, each line a new slice of time, and the signal appears as a bright, narrow, steady stripe, cutting through the noise like a thread of light through dark water. It is the most beautiful thing she has ever seen. Not because it is visually striking, because of what it means, because it is proof that somewhere in the vast and ancient darkness, on a world she has never seen, around a star she's only ever known as a catalogue number, something looked up at its own sky, chose a frequency, composed a message, and began to send. And then waited, for 72 years, for the message to cross the emptiness, for the photons to arrive at a small, blue, noisy planet, orbiting an ordinary star on the inner edge of the habitable zone, where a species of primates had recently built radio telescopes and pointed them at the sky, hoping, despite all evidence and all logic, despite the silence and the distance and the cold equations of probability, that someone, somewhere, was sending. Someone was. Tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow the press conferences begin. The headlines break in every language on Earth. The arguments start, fierce and confused and exhilarating, in parliaments and churches and university lecture halls and comment sections and family kitchens. The stock markets react. The theologians react. The conspiracy theorists react. The children react with a purity of wonder that the adults will envy. The fear arrives alongside the awe, and the two will coexist uneasily for a long time, possibly forever. But that is tomorrow. Tonight, it is still dark. The stars are still out. The signal is still pulsing. And a graduate student in a control room in the New Mexico desert is sitting quietly in front of a screen, watching primes count upward from a star in Hercules, with tears running down her face that she has not noticed, because she's looking at something that no human being has ever seen before. Proof that the universe is not empty, that the silence was not permanent, that the darkness between the stars was never as empty as it seemed. The dishes of the VLA turn slowly in the starlight. The signal continues. It has been continuing for 72 years at least, perhaps much longer. Perhaps it has been pulsing for centuries or millennia, sent by something patient enough to wait for a reply that might never come, broadcasting into the void with the same quiet determination that drove Maya to sit in a control room at 2:47 in the morning, reviewing data, checking candidates, doing the unglamorous, tedious, essential work of science because someone has to listen. Someone has to be awake when the signal arrives. Tonight, someone was. Outside, the desert is still. The air is cold, the stars are steady, and somewhere among them, in a direction you could point to if you knew where to look, a light has been shining for 72 years, carrying a message composed of the simplest, most universal language the cosmos has to offer. Numbers that are divisible only by themselves and one. Primes, the signature of a mind. Arriving now at a telescope in the desert, where a young woman sits alone with the knowledge that the world she woke up in this morning no longer exists, and that the world she will wake up in tomorrow will be more crowded, more mysterious, more frightening, and more beautiful than anything she ever imagined. The signal pulses 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23. Gap. Repeat. And somewhere, 72 light years away under a sky full of unfamiliar stars, something continues to send. It may not know that its message has arrived. It may not know that on a small blue planet, orbiting an ordinary yellow star, in an unremarkable arm of a spiral galaxy, a young woman is sitting in a control room, looking at a screen, weeping quietly, because a sequence of numbers has just answered the oldest question her species has ever asked. It may not care, it may not even still exist, but the signal continues, as it has continued for 72 years, as it may continue for centuries more, crossing the emptiness, carrying its primes, arriving, patient and faithful, at whatever dish is pointed in the right direction, on whatever world is ready to listen. Thank you for listening to Strindberg Space Stories. If this story gave you something to carry into the night, subscribing truly helps us keep making these, and I'm grateful for every one of you who does. Take care of yourself. Sleep well. Good night.